From Ticker News with Aaron Young, this is Ticker Today.
Hello, thanks for joining me today. A surprise ceasefire in the Middle East. President Trump announces a 12-hour truce between Israel and Iran after a tense series of missile strikes could mark the end of hostilities. Amid growing fears across the United States, Americans on edge over that new war with Iran. A new poll revealing deep anxiety across the US as Trump orders strikes on Iranian nuclear sites and warns of regime change. Damage control US attacks leave Iran's nuclear facilities reeling, and Russia backing Iran. The leaders condemning the strikes, Tehran threatening retaliation, calling American assets legitimate targets. Travel turmoil, airlines rerouting as missiles fly across the region, Iran targeting a US base in Qatar. That led major carriers including Qantas and Qatar to force and divert flights right across that region. Speaking of flying, Virgin Australia lifts off the airline's $685 million IPO, signalling a return to the ASX and fresh hope for Australia's sluggish listings market. This is Ticker Today, bringing you the top stories shaping the world right now. First today, President Trump announcing that Israel and Iran have agreed to a ceasefire, potentially bringing an end to their conflict. The announcement followed a missile attack by Iran on a US base in Qatar, which resulted in no injuries. Trump noted that the early warning of the attack may have facilitated the ceasefire, set to begin in its stages later on today. President Trump posting congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point the war will be considered ended. Now, despite this, fighting has continued, with reports of air defences activating in Tehran and Israel intercepting drones launched from Iran. Vice President J.D. Vance telling Fox News the president had been working the phone.
When I left the White House, I thought that we might be able to get it across the finish line before this broadcast, and it looks like the president has been able to do that. I mean, look, he's been working the phones constantly. Frankly, before the 12-day war started, but certainly over the past 12 days, the president's been extremely clear about America's national objective here. It is to create a world where Iran cannot build a nuclear weapon. We, of course, destroyed the nuclear program that they had, and the president told the entire team, we're going to work to make sure that they don't try to rebuild that nuclear capability in the future. And look, this is a great thing.
So it is being seen as a win for the White House amidst concerns about where the war was going. That recent Reuters Ipsos poll revealing growing anxiety among Americans regarding potential conflict with Iran. Concerns have been rising following President Trump's order to bombard Iranian nuclear facilities. Many citizens across the US fearing that escalating violence could have significant repercussions back home. The sentiment underscores the heightened alertness as tensions between the US and Iran continue to evolve. Meanwhile, the head of the UN Atomic Agency has reported that recent US attacks on Iran's Fordo enrichment site caused significant damage. Following this, Israel conducted strikes on access points to Fordo. In Moscow, President Putin discussed the situation with Iran's foreign minister, who had travelled there from Istanbul, claiming that the US strikes were not justified and that Russia would assist the Iranian people. Iranian military officials stated the attacks on their nuclear facilities violate sovereignty, designating US assets as legitimate targets in the conflict. Donald Trump has also raised the possibility of a change in leadership in Iran after his country joined Israel in striking Iranian nuclear facilities. This is what he said over the weekend after the US attack on the nuclear facilities. He posted to social media to ask, why wouldn't there be a regime change? His remarks came after other top US officials stressed that toppling Iran's leaders was not the aim of Saturday's military action. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt explained his comments.
The president's posture and our military posture has not changed. The president was just simply raising a question that I think many people around the world are asking. If the Iranian regime refuses to give up their nuclear program or engage in talks, we just took out their nuclear program on Saturday night, as you all know. But if they refuse to engage in diplomacy moving forward, why shouldn't the Iranian people rise up against this brutal terrorist regime? That's a question the president raised last night. But as far as our military posture, it hasn't changed.
Meanwhile, the US Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem briefed state governors on public safety following the strikes on nuclear sites. Noem says she's working closely with law enforcement agencies to ensure communities are well informed and kept safe.
Well, you know, the President of the United States is making some very important decisions right now. My responsibility is to secure the homeland and to do all I can to make sure that we're identifying threats that may be here, what we can do to get in front of them before anything could happen to the population that live here in the United States, but also to work with our local governors and law enforcement to make sure that they recognize potential threats or suspicious activity. So that's what we have not seen any currently, but I do know that I'm going to leave here and go get some intelligence briefings and need to get into a secure area for some new information.
Airlines across the Middle East began diverting flights following the missile strike by Iran's armed forces on a US military base in Qatar. Several flights already have been cancelled as airlines reassess their routes. Qantas diverted a series of flights from Perth to London due to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. And Qatar Airways, well, their flights also impacted. They've been sending cancellation messages like this one to passengers right throughout the day, blaming the closed airspace. Speaking of airlines, Virgin Australia is set to rejoin the ASX following a successful initial public offering, an IPO. The airline raised $685 million, which is seen as a potential boost for the current stagnant listings market. Move marks a significant step for Virgin Australia as it aims to strengthen its market presence against Qantas. Analysts are watching closely to see how the development impacts investor confidence and market dynamics right across the ASX. The E-Safety Commissioner in Australia has recommended the exemption for YouTube in the social media ban for users under 16 should be removed. The suggestion comes as part of the ongoing discussions on online safety for younger people. The Commissioner argues that all social media platforms should be subject to the same regulations. Maybe coincidentally, it comes a day after Google announced it would end a deal that saw it paying smaller news organisations in Australia for news content. Crude oil prices have fallen by 7%. That's a good news amid renewed optimism that the ongoing conflict will not significantly impact oil supplies right across the region. The decline follows the Iranian strike on a US airbase, which initially raised concerns about potential disruptions, but then came the ceasefire. Analysts suggest that the markets are stabilising as fears now subside. Traders will monitor the situation closely to see how geopolitical tensions may influence future oil prices.